Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Braulio Rosa, Executive Director of the Broward County Bar Association. It's March 2022, and we are celebrating Women's History Month. The Broward County Bar Association, in conjunction with the 17th Judicial Circuit, is recognizing excellent women leaders that have really impacted our lives here in Broward County, both lawyers, judges, and public servants. It is my honor and privilege to be interviewing today a Broward County icon, Lori Parrish. Welcome, Lori.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. With a neighbor and old colleague together. I was a Davie Gadfly resident, and you were a professional with Davie government when we first met.
That's true, and I always, as I had said to you before we started this interview, admired you immensely. So it's truly an honor.
Thanks. Most of your commissioners didn't when I audited them without them asking me.
Jeepers. I remember those days very clearly. So tell us a little bit about where you grew up and what that was like.
I was born in Evansville, Indiana, the first child on either side of the family born out of the state of Kentucky for generations. And I was also the first child ever born in a hospital. So my parents lived in northwestern Kentucky, but they drove me 50 miles away across Green River, and I was born in Evansville, Indiana, at St. Mary's Hospital. When I was on Easter Sunday, before I turned 8 years old in 1956, my father moved all of us to Florida. He had been in the Navy in World War II and had been on break here and leave. So we had his mother's sister lived here, and he worked for Texas Gas, and he took a job with Florida Gas Transmission, a subsidiary, and my father and a man named Buzz Holland designed the pipeline that brought natural gas from Texas to Port Everglades, and that's how we came here.
Wow. You know, I just picked up on something interesting, actually. So you said your family's from Kentucky, but you were born
in Evansville, Indiana.
Indiana and Kentucky, the connection. Recently, I was watching the movie on Lincoln, and he had a similar kind of background. I think he was from Kentucky but moved to Indiana at some point. Mm-hmm. So I guess political forces have that in common.
Well, I can tell you that my uncle, my grandmother's brother, my great uncle, was the governor of Kentucky, and he also was a state senator. And my father was a city council member, and my uncle, his brother, was a magistrate. A magistrate is like a county commissioner and rocks the roads in the winter. But rocking the roads in the winter is far more important than the county commissioner, and like a justice of the peace. But I grew up with a family like that. Although I was always what they considered the least likely one to be a politician, because you should never ask me what I think, because I'd tell you.
So I guess that was the motivation for you to eventually get involved in politics?
What happened, my son was in third grade gifted class at Cooper City Elementary, and the incumbent school board member's daughter was in third grade gifted class, and we went to a gifted parents meeting, and she kept interrupting the teacher, Kathleen Brunt, who's passed away, marvelous teacher, and saying that they should take the kids. Kathy Brunt was going to take them to see the Fort Lauderdale News at that time, how it was printed and how they functioned, and to take Coca-Cola bottling so they could see how things were done, and take them to farms and homestead. And Mary wanted them to go to SeaWorld and Parrot Jungle and the Serpentarium, which our kids went to those things anyway, because every relative we ever had that came to Broward County, we took them to all those things. So I was sticking up for the teacher, and, you know, all of us went out. Her mom, the principal, Miss Howard, always said, why were her moms always in the bar? Because we always worked. So if we got a chance for a night out, we went to Boomer's Bar on University and Griffin Road, and everybody was talking that the incumbent school board member was really awful. And I said, well, one of you should run against her. We'll all help. Anyway, long story short.
Did everyone turn around and point at you?
Long story short, I had a screwdriver, and pretty soon I was a candidate for the school board.
Sounds like a sailor store where they go and have some fun and end up with a tattoo, but this time you end up having to run.
Yeah, anyway, that's how I first ran. Because I always thought I wasn't good enough. I always thought other people, you know, smarter and better than me, you know, with more money, they became politicians. I always thought I was pretty ordinary. But then I thought, well, if not me, who? You know, you just can't complain about something. You've got to get off your duff and do something about it. So I became a candidate for the school board, and I loved the job.
Yeah, how many years did you do that?
I did the school board for one term because I firmly believed you should have kids in school. And the other thing I'd always thought about when I grew up, I was a fan of Ann Kolb and, you know, belonged to Orchid Societies and Bromeliad Societies with her. And she was a Sun Sentinel writer who became a county commissioner. And I always thought when I grew up, I'd really like to be a county commissioner because that's where the government was. So when Howard Foreman was running for the Senate, I ran for the county commissioner right after I left the school board. I spent 16 years there, and then ran for property appraiser and spent 12 there. I call it my misspent youth.
So total of 32 years as a public servant.
Yes.
Did you ever get tired of doing this? I mean, it's got to be demanding on you and your family.
Not really. I loved it. I loved it. I love the school board. I love doing that job. I love the people I work with. And I thought, there's so many unsung heroes. In fact, I prided myself on that I fought for teachers' raises, and the only time teachers have raised 10% raises every year for 4 years in a row with the 4 years I served on the school board. And that's where I learned that, like, women weren't equal to men and they didn't make the same amount of money. It would just tick me off. It's like women could be elementary principals, but they were never middle school principals or high school principals. It was predominantly men. And then one time, I guess the thing I changed the most at the school board is our school bus drivers made like $5 and change an hour for driving our children, our most precious resource. And our pony drivers were trucks and vans that drove the internal school mail and spare parts from school to school and site to site. And they made $15 and something. And I argue that our school bus drivers should make more money than our pony drivers because what was more precious, our mail and spare parts or our children? And it took me 3 years, but I won that argument, and I made them change everything to gender neutral. Everything said he, and all the resolutions and stuff say, no, all men by these presents. And I said, why can't you just strike that out and say, no, all by these presents? Anyway, so you had to say, start using gender neutral terms, which back in 1984, that was very controversial. But it was my best gift when I left. A man named Jim, and I've forgotten his last name now, he was director of like the pony drivers and the cafeteria workers, that department. And they all wanted to chip in and get me a present. And some of the ladies said, why don't you give her what she really wants? And he said, what that? She said, let's look and see if we can't find her some non-traditional role models. So my going away present when I left the school board in 1988 was the first female motorcycle mechanic instructed at Sheridan Hills Vocational School and a female pony driver.
I love it.
So that I loved it. That was like, they listened, they heard me. And I said to the lady, she said, it was my idea. And I said, that's great. So.
You know, it's interesting. We were talking about my age and everything. I remember starting school, and when you were taught proper English, the pronoun that you used that would generalize for everyone was he. And in my lifetime, and even I know I do it, I always say he or she. You know, or use some other kind of pronoun, but generally I always make sure that I include both because it could be either
easy.
or.
It's easy. Like, it's not firefighter.
Or he and she.
Or it's not firemen, it's firefighters. Then you can say they.
Right.
And it's not so cumbersome.
Right.
In
my writing, too, by the way, when I always say he and she or he, I always...
Well, to this day, pick up the newspaper, any of them, including the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, and they use the wrong pronoun. They say they. Drives me crazy.
It's true, because that's plural, not singular.
Right. So if you just put an S on things, principals, they, teachers, they, lawyers, they. Mm-hmm. So it becomes easier. Because my favorite question, people would stood up, the developer, he, and I would always say, how do you know it's not a she?
It's true. It's very true. So you were the impetus behind the school board changing their language.
And then I got to the county commission.
Talk about your time at the county commission.
The county commission, my forte has always been treat everybody equal, and that in all phases of government, your employees should match your population. You should always hire the best person, but if you're short in some areas, then you recruit the best person and help train that person to take a job. Anyway, so when I got there, everything was gender neutral, to the point that the county attorneys went in their computers and put he, his, him as misspelled words, so that if they had that word, it would pop up so that, they could correct it. But it got to be funny. They had a big debate, apparently. I didn't know about manhole. They didn't know how to say that, so they turned it into a circular sewer cover. But it was fun. But I also, when I got there, Lex Hester was the county administrator. They gave me this book of all the department heads and managers. And I said, where are the women and minorities? And he said, what? I said, all these are white men. So then I read the charter, and the charter said the county commission could approve the hiring of directors and like assistant directors. So I started making them put them all on the agenda. And then make them give us the statistics of how many employees in the county government were Hispanic, African American, Native American, how many were men and how many women, and then this employee. And what it did is, I think it said to everybody, like HR in the county, look a little harder. Don't take the easy route. If a white male is the best qualified, so be it. But make sure that I know that you checked. And also, it was like, if there weren't any female port directors. And I said, well, you need to encourage the new port director to find a minority person who's qualified to be there. And the other thing I liked is, I think every cop should believe he or she can be chief. Every teacher should believe he or she could be police chief. Excuse me, or superintendent. And if I always wanted every place I worked to be 3 deep. I don't want to hear somebody's on vacation, somebody's sick, and we can't answer your question. Because that way you don't have brain drain. It's just simple rules of life. And then I was on the value adjustment board because I was the new person on the totem pole. When you're on the school board, nobody liked to serve on the value adjustment board. You have to hear property tax appeals. And it used to be 2 school board members and 3 county commissioners. Well, when Neil Sterling and I got on the school board, we were the new people. We got sent to the value adjustment board. And I said, what's the value adjustment board? It must have been an inside joke. I didn't know. So I went over there and did 4 years. Well, they send you there because nobody likes to read boxes and boxes of paperwork. So when I got to the county commission, John Hart and I got sent to the value adjustment board. I said, wait a minute. I've already done 4 years at the school board. And I remember Scott Cowan said to me, and now you're the new person on this side. So I got sent back to the value adjustment board. Well, by the time I'd spent 8 years, I knew the issues, so I just stayed on the value adjustment board. And I disagreed with the property appraiser and how things were being done, and on agriculture exemptions and horse boarding as agriculture and all these kinds of things. So I ran for property appraiser, and I loved it. I loved every job I had, but I decided that you should always retire at the top of your game, not at the bottom, and that I'd worked my whole life. I was raising my granddaughter. She was halfway through 8th grade, and I wanted to retire so I'd be home for high school. And I did it, and I love it. Now I just play with my orchids and play in the dirt.
Well, before we get there, talk about, and it doesn't seem like you had obstacles, but of course you had to have obstacles. It was a different time when you were coming up.
Well, I think because when I was Southern, I remember when we got to North Andrews Gardens Elementary School, they said to my mother they would have to test us, the 3 of us. I have a younger sister and younger brother. They would have to test us to see if we could keep up. Actually, when they tested us, we could have been promoted. But I had a Southern accent. I don't think I do now, but I did then. And it was just different, but I loved it. I loved growing up in Broward County. And the joke used to be that I went to high school with half the county. But, and everybody said it's hard for a woman to run. Anyway, excuse me.
Take your time.
and that I was a woman. But I never found that to be hard. When I ran for the school board, I had all male opponents, except the incumbent in the primary. And I started with 7, and I ended up, there was just 2 of us in the primary. But I thought, what could I do different? So I got long, funky-looking earrings and wore red. I had like a closet full of red. So I would stand out because everybody running that year was a man. There were no women up for re-election. So it was easy to stand out, and I didn't think it was hard. The only thing I found hard was raising money. You know, if you're Southern, you're not allowed to look in your mother or grandmother's purse. You know, if you said something, I'd say, oh, I got that in my purse. Go, you know, just reach in there and get it. My mother and grandmother would have never done that. And if you ask somebody for money, it means you're poor. So I had to get over that. But I did real well after I got over it. But, you know, if I want something, I'll just work and work and work. And I was lucky that when you grow up here, you have a lot of friends, and they were all willing to help me. I stood on street corners and waved signs and did everything.
So work ethic is important to you, something that you learned from your parents or just innately something that is part of your DNA?
I think it was my DNA. My father was an engineer and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but I always had a competitive edge to me. I don't know. You know, I always questioned everything and was just competitive.
So talk a little bit about life balance, work and professional and personal. I know that's a big thing now more with this younger millennial generation.
Well, I think the roles are different now. I mean, when a woman has a baby or, you know, if a couple is expecting, they're expecting. We're pregnant. And I think dads are part, you know, it's not just the maternal role belongs to one person. People parent as a team. I think that was an issue. That's why I've been married 3 times. I had to find a good one. It was hard. I mean, I remember Eileen Lieberman, when I first ran, I said to her, you know, you've done this. What's your best advice? She goes, go to JCPenney or Sears and get a lot of white cotton underwear for everybody. Underwear, she says, you know, they have lots of options for clothes, but if you don't have clean underwear, it can make everybody mad. You can throw all of it in one load, put it all in one basket. They can fish through it. They know whose is whose. And she says, white underwear. And I said, oh, but, you know, that was something. The other thing is, you know, you got to remember when I first started running, there were no cell phones. When I got to be a county commissioner, there were the big things in a case that looked like a briefcase. You had that, and there were car phones. But they had, you know, beepers were new technology. I think it's much easier today. You saw when my granddaughter called and wants to go get a poke bowl. I mean, I think it's easier today because the communication is different. It wasn't like that when I ran. What I used to do, the way I balanced it, is I was willing to give up 2 Saturday nights a month. That was it. Whatever invite I got for the first 2, that was it. I was willing to do any amount of speeches or things during the workday, but at night I would only do 1 school night a week. And I would do no Friday nights and no Sundays, anything, unless it was, you know, something on a Sunday that was so significant. And I took my children with me. I mean, used to, when I had to travel, I would take one or the other one with me so that they would all get a turn. I mean, because you can remember, as a single mom, that's another thing, is like, I was a single mom, so I was a bargain shopping, coupon clipping single mom. If you want somebody in government to manage your money, find one of those. They're careful with every dollar they still spend. I still have a handful of coupons.
So, Lori, for young women out there, whether they're in college or just young kids growing up, lawyers or someone who's aspiring to get involved in politics, to become a public servant, what's your recommendation to those young women?
First of all, keep all of your friends. Learn everything you can. Always vote. Volunteer on a campaign. You know, if you read about or hear about somebody that you like, even if it's 4 hours every 2 weeks or something, volunteer. But the other thing, too, is serve on one of your local boards. You know, serve on some section of the Bar Association. Serve on the little town or big town city you live in. Serve on one of their volunteer boards. work with the PTA at your children's school, serve on a committee in your college, participate in something. Everything teaches you something, and then your network keeps growing bigger and bigger. I think you do that. Then the other thing is everyone should pay attention to what goes on around them. I mean, local government has probably more impact on you than the federal government, except taxes. But, pay attention to the world around you so that you're well informed. My daughter married a man that was 13 years older than her. And she said, Jeff, one time, Dad, I think I need to go get a master's degree. Everybody's talking about things I don't understand. He said, Brandy, I'll send you a subscription to the New York Times. And Brandy said, Dad, it worked. I know it. Stay informed. Be a well-rounded person. I think that, and give me a call. Every 2 years, I used to take on 2 young women and sort of mentor them into politics. And, not the year I was running, because the year I was running, my favorite candidate was always me. But the off year, I would always take a couple of young people, and to the extent I could, give them a fundraiser. I still do things like that to stay involved a bit.
At some point, maybe I'll have to have some kind of program here where we, if you would be open to it.
Oh, sure.
Where we invite
I've done
women
who are interested in running.
And just, kind of get an insider's look at what you need to do.
Well, used to, like the Sun Sentinel, we used to say that the Sun Sentinel endorsement was worth 4% of the vote. It's not anymore. But, all the old ways of doing it. And then it's so expensive to campaign now because early voting, I always chased mail-in ballots, always did that, because you knew if they took the time to request a ballot, the odds were they were going to vote. And, but what I'm saying is it's very different. All the things we used to think were true are not necessarily true. And I think you need to build your resume and touch as many people who are interviewing to, like the Board of Realtors, the police organizations, the firefighters, the AFL-CIO, all the different groups that endorse. You want to get as many endorsements as you can because your name gets put on the palm cards they mail out, and somebody will find a connection to you.
I'm definitely going to hold you to that. We'll have to do some kind of program, because I know we do a program.
Where do you live right now?
I'm out in West Davie.
Okay.
Very close to you.
I know West Davie, but...
Ivanhoe area.
But, maybe you ought to run.
Well, we'll see, baby. You never know.
I used to be a school board employee, and I thought, I could do this. So then I went to the school board.
Yeah. Well, definitely, I think it would be a good program for us to host. We have a program that we do, Pathways to the Bench, and to educate lawyers who are interested in potentially, running for judge or trying to get an appointment. So we try to educate them on both. But I think lawyers in particular can serve a great role in the legislature or local, like you said.
Almost all the legislators are lawyers.
Right. County commission or municipal commissioners, those people impact your life big time, because all those public services you receive are decided by the budgets that these people approve or don't approve. So I think that lawyers, we would be good servants in those roles.
What I always say, you remember what Walter Mondale says? I always tell everybody, and because he said, I'd be a great president, but first I have to get elected. You have to find a shtick, and you have to learn. The hardest thing for me was learning to talk to people. How do you get a 2 to 3 minute opening and a 30-second to 60-second closing? How do you convince everybody to vote for you? So I always say, work it, walk it. Door to door, high likely voters. I used Tootsie Pops and called them Lori Pops and dog biscuits for the dogs, and a variety of things. But you have to, and I think people, if they know you want it, and if you understand their issues, and if you listen to them, find out what's important.
Well said. I know Marty, who came after you. I remember him saying, I walked like every door. I went and greeted everyone. So you need to get out and meet people and talk to them, listen to them.
You find out who has pretty yards. I used to have these postcards, and, one would say, sorry, I missed you. And I'd write a little something. Loved your, lily at the front door, or something about, staghorn or something. And then, or the one to introduce, but you have something, and then you follow up.
They don't forget if you have a personal note like that.
And I think people are flattered that you work that hard. Although now, everybody knocking on doors they don't want to answer, and
Yeah.
it's a different world sometimes.
Different world. All right, Lori, so on the lighter side, when we had talked about this, if there were a biopic that was produced to tell your story here as a leader in Broward County, who would that actress be that would portray you?
Well, I would like somebody that looked like Sandra Bullock, a tall, thin blonde, which I'm not, and somebody with the personality of Melissa McCarthy, I guess. You're somebody fun but gorgeous, because I'm probably not either of those things, but that's who I'd like to, like I went to the doctor one time to lose weight, and she said, "How much would you like to weigh?" I said, 118 pounds. And she looked a little shocked at me. I said, "You asked me how much I'd like to weigh." But, something like that.
Well, I think you're a beautiful person, and you're
Thanks.
very gregarious. Is it McCarthy? Melinda?
Melissa McCarthy.
Melissa McCarthy.
She's the comedian one.
I've seen her, yeah. And so you're gregarious, and you're warm, and you have a great personality that way. So
Thanks.
don't change.
But could I look like Sandra Bullock?
Well, we'd all like. I like to, have the male version of it. We all wish we.
Oh, my favorite is Sam Mitchell. She's my favorite.
Who's Sam Mitchell?
Isn't it the cowboy with the handlebar?
Oh,
Sam.
Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott. That's it.
It's beef in America time or whatever, right?
Well, at my age, that's
I love it. Anyhow, Lori Parrish, truly a force here in Broward County. As I had said before, I remember watching you as a kid, kind of making my bones, and just being so impressed and in awe of your abilities out there. Thank you for taking your time.
Thank you. I'm pleased. And don't worry about your birthday. Double nickels are great. My family always say the double number ones are the luckiest ones ever.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thank you.